they could just fix this stupid little thing.
I know. I'll turn the moment connection off for you, or something like that.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Steel Forum. Today we're in a bit of a mood. We're got some fresh contract drawing revisions and started talking about those, and we thought, hey, maybe this would be great content for our channel. Everybody can commiserate with us. So today you get to listen to us whine and complain about drawing revisions like you have 1,000 times before that. All that and more today on the Steel Forum. We've been trying to get to doing, another set of episodes for this pretty much this entire week. And the proverbial dookie keeps hitting the fan, and that's just the nature of detailing office. I'm pretty convinced that that's why there are no detailer YouTube channels, because they're too damn busy to ever do it. And right. We get it, and we've started this several times and have had to ditch it and come back to it. And that's actually a good segue into our actual topic today, which is drawing revisions, but not in a formal way. Every once in a while, we just want to have conversations that you all can listen along to and commiserate. That's the right word, right? Commiserate.
Commiserate.
Yeah. I think I'm putting too emphasis on the co.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, today we were working on a project, and the drawings have just been constantly revised. Like the first ones we got, right? We get a set of drawings, and along with it we get a CAD file and an IFC file, which would be great if any of them matched the other parts of the drawing. And it's not even like close, right?
Yep. No two things have agreed at this point.
Yeah. And I don't know. And there's this weird discussion that you have at the time, right? Like, which wrong are you going to be okay with following? And you try to justify it. Like, I'm talking to the customer, and I said, well, the IFC model is the most recent thing that we got. And so we're going to, we think that that's probably up to date. We're going to try and follow that. To which their counter-argument, which is perfectly valid, is it doesn't really matter what the model shows because nobody in the field has the model. They've got the contract drawings, and that's what they've got to work off, so that should be what you work off. Which is just as valid of an argument, which just makes me go, damn it. Because
it's like lawyers going round and round on something.
Right.
Which item of the law is going to hold precedence? And
right.
In our case, unfortunately, whatever we say does not necessarily go, so our argument is easily thrown by the wayside, and whatever the design team wants, the design team gets.
That's one nice thing about being a subcontract detailer, right? It's like I could just go to our customer and say, listen, there's choice A or choice B. Which do you want me to do? And then when they say A and it turned out to be B, okay, you got to pay me again because now I have to do this work again. And they get it, right? And usually they get paid for it too. So it's not really a problem. But still, just as much, if I make a decision and it's the wrong decision, I got to eat that. So there are some nice things about being an hourly employee. Like yesterday, it would have been nice to be hourly when one of our employees accidentally erased all of the member details that we've been scrubbing for the past 2 days.
He got paid to do it twice.
Right, he got paid to do it twice. But
you got nothing for having to help, though.
Right. Yeah. I think I got an ulcer from trying to get it done. And of course, it's always on the last day of the project that those things happen, right? Like, it is inevitably your customer has said, all right, you can have until that date, but it's got to be that date. And then you're right there, like, it was maybe like 11 o'clock. And we're like wrapping things up. Everything's just about done. And then you send me a message. You seem to have a problem. And then we did that thing, that every SDS user should be familiar with, where you try and figure out what you can do to cobble back together something of your backup and all of those things. And we back up on the regular, right? Like, if it's more than 4 hours between the last time we did a backup, that's surprising.
Yeah.
But
Well, we had a perfect storm the night before, though, because you had an issue with you needed to run a verify and fix, and something was hanging up. I believe you were telling me, and you weren't able to get it to properly complete so that you could do your backup, and you left the machine running overnight. I came on in the morning and found that it was done and kind of crashed out, so I just closed everything. I had no idea that a backup was needed, and I just shut down the machine, and I had to try to clear some issues out to get it running right again, and
yeah.
it just entirely was missed.
Yeah, because normally at the end of my night, I would do a backup. But because I was running a verify and fix, that was taking forever. Like, I sat there, and this is like 11 o'clock at night. I sat there for 45 minutes just watching this thing run through its verify and fix on what is essentially a friggin' supercomputer. Like, we're not messing around with these machines. And
Right. And it was a small job, right? Was that little industrial one?
No. It wasn't VCNA. It was
Oh, that's right. It was
Arconic.
that plant expansion.
Yeah. It was a fairly large job, not,
Okay.
and it just
Well, large for us.
right. It's not it's not 1,200 tons, but
People that detail and that use a comma when they're quoting their tonnage, they're in a whole different league as far as that. I can't even imagine what a verify and fix takes to run on that sort of a setup.
yeah we typically go
long as
up
ours
to
takes.
1,000 tons, but we don't push past that. But I would say the majority of things that we do that are in the largest realm, because we do a lot of rinky-dink stuff too. Like, we'll do $1,200 of stuff, but the 200 to 300 ton range, that's I wouldn't say large, but it's a considerable job anyways. Which, we're running way too much computer to be doing it, but it's kind of an all or nothing situation for us. But anyways, so that was the situation. We haven't even talked about the drawing revisions we got in, but so back to that topic. We get this set of drawings, and then we get another set of drawings, and we get a third set of drawings. And, now the customer, hi Steph, if you're watching, says, hey, what's the schedule on it? And we're like, at this point, I don't even know. So we had to sit down, and we went through all of okay, first they said this, and then they said this, and now they say this, which kind of makes sense, but then we had this other thing, and an RFI response in between when they said this and this contradicts what they said here. It's like, okay, so essentially what we've done now is moved all of the grids, revised all of the base plates. Not by a lot, but enough. And so we're just going to take it, wipe it, start over again. Because at some point when you're doing these revisions, you're asking for mistakes. We recently had that problem with revisions where it was like, okay, here's a revision on top of a revision, and here are the RFIs and the field sketches that modify the revisions, and all right, put all that stuff together to make a reasonable set of contract drawings. And I went to the customer and I said, listen, we've received all of this stuff in this varying order of revisions, and I think we've incorporated everything you've asked us to, but there's no way for me to guarantee that every email that you've ever sent, even if we received the email, if it was in a string of other emails with other attachments or whatever else, that all of these things have been incorporated. So we're relying on the fact that we sent approval drawings, and the approval drawings have marked everything up outside of that. If there's other stuff that's not incorporated into those approval drawings, let us know. And that originally that was the whole purpose of approval drawings was, hey, here's what I think you told me. Does this look right to you? And now it's become this entirely different thing where I don't even know what the purpose is of approval drawings anymore, because they disclaim all responsibility for knowing anything about the project, despite being, legally obligated to not do that. And we'll get drawings approved as noted with considerable changes. We've reworked the entire design of this area, but approved as noted. Take a stab, and it's like, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Take another look at these drawings. And I don't know why I bother, because still, if something goes wrong after we've submitted approval drawings and they say, yeah, approved. Yeah. You remember that freaking job where they could not decide if the floor was sloping or level?
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of the ground floor. Yeah, no, that was like the third or fourth floor up. And they couldn't decide if it was sloping or level. And then they couldn't even tell us, once they decided it was sloping, what the slope was, what were the key elevations at each end. They didn't have any information for us.
Right.
They actually refused, they adamantly refused to complete their drawings.
Yeah.
They just started sending us CAD files and said, here's what we want. No dimensions on it either. So even once we did everything, we'd send it in for approval, and all they would say is, did you match the CAD files?
Right. And we got into trouble, not real trouble because not a problem, but the customer was trying to make it a problem, because we said, we asked the question several times. Hey, you said slope, but you never provide a slope, and the drawings show this as level, except for your little arrow that wrote and where you wrote slope. And we sent several approval drawings and never got the issue addressed. And finally, with the customer's, okay, we said on the approval drawings, hey, we don't have any information on this slope. It doesn't indicate to us, doesn't seem to be sloping. There are problems if it does slope. If it slopes, tell us where and how, or we're going to make it level. And they didn't, so we made it level. And still, it, like always, became our fault. What are you going to do?
Yeah, at some point you have to wonder, should you just quit the job and risk the relationship with the customer that way versus them forcing you to but they put something on you that isn't your fault, but they're going to claim it's your fault, and you're going to lose the customer anyway, but now you're in for the money.
Yeah, and I don't know, I always struggle, because my goal really is always to make this building get up, right? Like, I want the building up, I want it to be right, I want it to fit, like, I want to be the guy that customers come to when they've got a problem that needs to be solved.
Right.
I want to be a tool in their toolkit. But when you run into a situation where there's so many revisions that can't possibly be tracked back, particularly when the design team is absolutely refusing to do their job completely, the customers, a lot of times, everybody along the line will commiserate with you and be like, oh, you're right. This is terrible. We really need to figure this out. But steel seems to be the only trade in which you have to get things right before it's in the field. Everybody else is perfectly content with just, it was close enough.
Yep.
If the mason puts the wall in the wrong place, all they do is send us a letter saying, hey, we put the wall in the wrong place. Fix all your steel, would you please? We go, okay, we'll fix all our steel. And then you send them an invoice later to fix all the steel, and they're like, what do you mean? How could you possibly want to get paid for your time and effort? I don't understand. That's ridiculous. So, one of the first jobs that I thought of when we proposed this as a possible topic of discussion was the one with the angle, where they had written 19.5 degrees, but really what they meant was 19.5825 degrees. And then they send us later that correction, right? Like, they just note it like it's this casual thing, except this angle projects out hundreds of feet down the building line.
Are you talking about that cafeteria we did a few years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I remember that one. The structural had it as something like 5 or 5.5 degrees, and the architecturals had it as 6, but we didn't catch it because we weren't looking for discrepancies between the drawings. I had my information. why go looking for it again?
Right, and that's
And-
our policy is right. Like, we will go look for information in the architecture drawings, and if we notice a problem, we will point it out. But if we don't have a reason to go looking for that information elsewhere, we're not going to. Right?
Right.
Like,
It's not our job to check and correct the design drawing.
no, and the code of standard practice is pretty clear on that. Right. Like you are responsible to point out errors when you find them, but you are not responsible to find them. Like, we're not their checkers any more than they're our checkers. And then, the approval drawings come back and they say, this, you wrote 19.5 here, just fix this to 19.587. And it's like, okay, but we have to redraw this entire building now. Like, every beam just got longer. Because, we're like, yeah, but it's only, a couple decimals. And it's like, it's math. Like, if you want to go back to 19.5 degrees, I'll be more than happy to oblige you. But unless you do that, I have to redraw. It either fits or it does not.
Yep, and that was the case too, where you had a skewed grid line that all of the beams tied to, and all of the beams were sloping. So now, as it stretches in a different direction,
I'd forgotten
the beam
about that,
slope
too.
modifies. Yeah, and it was all moment connections, all sloping moment connections, and they were weird. So they were all graphically done too.
Like, our common phrase in our office is they only change two dimensions, the radius and the work point.
Yep.
And we say it as a joke, but that's happened.
Oh, it happens more often.
And they really will say it with that tone, that dismissive, oh, we only changed these two little things. And, like, we kind of chuckle, and then they don't. And you're like, it's that awkward moment of, you understand, right? Like, this isn't acceptable. But a lot of times they don't. Good project managers will and such, and a lot of times the project manager gets it, but the owner, of the fabricating business or of our customer, somebody up the chain from them does not get it. So they have to play along with the, I don't really think it's that much. And it's like, we're not padding our change orders here. Like, this is how many hours it's going to take us. If you instead want us to just bill you what it actually took us, as opposed to making you a proposal ahead of time, I'll be happy to do it. I don't care. But if you want me to be at risk, I'm going to decide what. And that's the difference between a proposal and an invoice after. A proposal, I have to cover the eventualities, right, to the best of my ability. I can't be ridiculous, but I need to say, okay, how long might this take? And because the customer, if it takes longer, the customer doesn't want to hear from me that, oh, it actually took longer than I projected. That change order that you got approved is no longer good. I'm going to need another, $1,800. That's
and despite the fact that they know it's taking longer because you've sat on this and worked on it for a solid additional week, you're not entitled to any more money, and they're perfectly happy with that. But, it goes the other way. If I get this thing done in a day, if it turned out to be a whole lot simpler than I, worst case, feared, I'm not giving you a credit for that.
Right.
That was the price. We agreed to the price. I knew that if I went long, I was going to have to eat it. So if I get it done quicker, you don't get anything else for it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the trade-off to you not trusting that I'm just going to bill you the time anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to bill you the worst case.
And it's a reasonable thing, too. And I can't think of many cases where we've sent a bill and did not expect that the customer would go get that money back anyways, right? Most of these revisions are caused by bad contract drawings or revision to the contract drawings. One of those two things where they should be passing that bill up. And we've had customers who are like, oh, I don't want to make my customer upset by writing a change order. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, why would they expect you to do that for free? Customer service is great. And you can absolutely, if one of our customers makes a decision and accidentally it causes a change order later, and it's, a reasonable, percentage of the job, I'll eat it as a customer service thing. But it's small, right? And it's a favor, and they should know that, we're eating this out of a favor. You dropped the ball or screwed up, and here you go. We'll take care of this for you, no problem. It shouldn't be expected at all. And you get a couple of them, right? Like, it's not all the time. If a customer came and asked for a special favor, asked for us to take care of them or whatever else, or, hey, I dropped the ball, fine. We can deal with it. That's part of sales and part of customer service. But just the expectation that we're just going to eat our detailing costs is, frankly, it's insulting. Can you imagine going to your mechanic and asking for the same thing?
Go to the mechanic, tell them, hey, I'm pretty sure that I've got this problem wrong, and they replace it and it didn't fix the issue.
Right.
Hey, I'm certain that I have a bad ball joint. And they don't. Okay, you want me to replace the ball joint? Yes. Okay, well, I replaced the ball joint. Didn't fix the problem. Well, what's the problem? Well, I have a hard time braking. Well, that has nothing to do with your ball joint. That's unrelated. I'm not going to give you that for free, but, sometimes people will expect that. And it's just unrealistic to think that you're going to just get something absolutely for free because, we've said it before, all we have to sell is our time.
Oh, and that
Time.
actually, that puts me on the topic of time, right? Like, it's not just money. We schedule in the period in which it's going to take us to draw this job. And we can do that for a quote. But once you come back to me and you say, okay, they're revising the contract drawings, your approval drawings are probably going to sit out for a month, and then you're going to get revised drawings. Okay, so after a month, when you get me back the drawings, I will basically rebid the job to you. I'll tell you when I can get to it and when I can have it done. And that process is just as much painful. Because it's not always, it's usually not the money that causes the problem, it's the time. It's like, hey, sorry, but you put your job on hold. I started another one because otherwise I can't feed my family. And I've got to finish that other job, and then I can get back to yours. And we do our best with it. Like, if we can squeeze it in, if we can work a little bit of overtime or whatever else, we absolutely do that to try and make everybody happy. But when the choice is upset customer A who did nothing wrong, or upset customer B who they didn't do anything wrong, but their job was the problem, I have to go with the person that actually caused the problem. It's sometimes hard because customers don't want to know that you have other customers, which is weird. Like, this is one of the only businesses where that's the case, right? Like, where even talking about, hey, I'm working on another project can offend your customers. Same thing like with my mechanic. If I went into my mechanic and saw another car up on the rack, I wouldn't, think that my car was getting any less attention. It's just, hey,
Right.
I don't work just for you. If you want me to be your employee, maybe hire me.
Right. Imagine doing that, though. You walk into a collision shop or something, and you see that they've got other cars up on the lift, and you actually flip out on them. Why aren't you working on my car?
Right.
Well, because they got here first. I don't care. You work for me. Fix my car now. Can you imagine doing that?
No. And that's
But that's
the thing.
what we deal with all the time.
Right. The fabricators are never quite that, transparent about it. But you could just tell that they're miffed.
Oh, sometimes they are that transparent.
Yeah,
about it.
but we don't work with those ones for very long.
It's more red flags.
Yeah. My favorite one, too, is you get the approval drawings done, and you send them in. And not the approver, but the customer comes back and is like, oh, I looked at these things and I want to make these changes. All things that absolutely could have been anticipated when we started the job. Right?
Yep.
Like, oh, we want to change these connections, we want to change these. And we have a customer survey before we start a job that says, all right, what are your standard connections? What do you want to do? Are there any exceptions? All that stuff. And it would be extremely annoying for us to send that to the customer before every job and say, hey, you still want to use clip angles, guys?
Yeah.
Right. Like that would be obnoxious. But yeah, they'll come back with these changes of connection types and, I happen to have this size of beam sitting in the shop. Can you replace it all over? And it's like,
Yeah, can you work it in somewhere?
yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. I'll do whatever you want. You just sign here, right? I don't know. Or like they add this like new requirement and then they pretend that it's something that everybody in the industry would know.
Like leveling devices.
Sure. Or bent plate pour stop. Like we had to have add that one into our customer file. Right? Like, hey, OSHA says don't put the bent plate on, right? So we don't want to put the bent plate on. You got to put it on the field. But half of them say, well, there's this interpretation, which they're right. There's several interpretations, all of which in the end, I firmly believe point you back to don't put the bent plate on. Don't do it. Bad idea. But they disagree with me and they're writing the checks, so okay, I'll do it however we want. But if you don't tell me to bolt that bent plate on when the drawings show welding that bent plate on, I'm not going to bolt it on.
Right, and sometimes, fabricators that are working with a subcontract detailer, they need to kind of temper that expectation of, you need to either tell me exactly what it is that you want, or you need to accept that what I have done is correct, just not necessarily the way you would have done it.
Yep.
Bolting versus welding in some situations, just like you were talking about with a bent plate pour stop. There are some fabricators that would rather weld everything on, and there are some that would prefer to bolt it or ship it loose and bolt it, ship it loose and field weld it. And either you tell me what you want or you're getting what the contract drawings show.
Yep.
So if they show welded, you're getting welded. Don't cry to me later that you want it bolted. That's going to be a change. It's not what the contract drawings show.
Right.
And if you want me to hold your hand and ask you questions at every single section, then you need to show up when I do a kickoff meeting and we go through everything page by page and make comments about that. And we've had that happen where they're at our kickoff meeting, they're going through the drawings with us, and they say nothing at all about it, and we do what the drawings show, and then they've got complaints after.
Yeah, and or we run into the situation where we say, okay, we want to have a kickoff meeting to review everything, and they say, okay, I'm busy, and then we're a quarter of the way into the schedule for the job, and we still haven't had the kickoff meeting, and we just have to go. We just have to start the project.
Right.
Because as much as it's something that they were responsible for and we asked them to do, they're still, in the end, they want that schedule kept. So, okay, we're going to go do it. And then later it's, the hung lintel showed slots with plates over the top, but I don't like using plate washers. So can you redo that? And it's like, it's the hung lintel. It's literally the worst thing to draw. I don't want to redraw it.
Yeah, we had that happen on a job where we had, what was it? It was shop-attached hung lintels that had to be level, of course, on a sloping beam, and they hauled off and reconfigured the support system for it. So it started out where they had, it was the typical plate, like a big gusset plate, and then a hanger angle. And I said, no, we don't want to do that. Let's put outrigger angles at top and bottom flange, and then we'll run an angle off that. And, now you're dealing with something that wants to be normal to the beam, which means it's sloping in real life. You can't have that. A gusset plate could have been tilted into the web, no problem, but now you've got this goofy stuff going on, and we build to that, and we point it out, and they say, well, we want to be able to pin it flat to the underside of the flange, and you've got it rotated. Well, so you want the hangers to be crooked? Well, we don't want that either. Well, you got to pick one. So after all of that, now we've gone through 3 iterations, and they say, you know what? Just give us some gusset plates. That's what's simple. And if I'd have lived in the same state, I'd have shown up and choked somebody over that one. Sometimes it's good that we're far.
Right. Well, and also that we don't allow you to
period.
have contact with the customers.
Absolutely. I'm not nearly as political as you are.
Yeah. Well, there's been several times when people have said things to me, customers, that were so ridiculous that I laughed at it, and then they are not laughing. And like I have to try and like gather myself.
Dial that one back.
And be like, oh, you really meant to do that everywhere. Oh, okay, I guess we can do that. Terrible idea.
I'm gonna need that one in writing.
One of the problems that we always run into, we'll get a customer, we've got flange plate and moment connections, and we design them with standard gaps, 1/8 for this, 3/16 for this, quarter, whatever. Again, it's in our customer questionnaire, just to make sure that, hey, this is what you want. And then they'll get into the field, and it's, oh, well, our welders were a little bit off, and so now everything's tilted in, and the gap isn't actually what you say on your drawings, so we want you to change your drawings to be bigger, so next time the gap will be right. And I'm like, wait a minute. So instead of training your shop staff to make sure that they follow the drawings, you want us to change the drawings so that if the error that they make is in the bad direction, it still technically fits. Okay, but now you've got a half-inch gap between your flange plate and your beam, and you got to fill that with something. So you need chips. Oh, we don't need chips. We'll be fine. And then an inspector comes and looks at it, and at this point they've put Joe Ironworker on there with his TC gun, and the moment plate now looks like friggin' that. And the inspector said, "Hey, no, you can't do that. Like, especially it's going to spin the heads off those TC bolts before they ever reach pretension because they're not in firm contact." And then the customer comes to us, and they're, we've actually had it too, where we've said, "Don't do this," and then they did it, and then there was a problem because of it, and they come to us and say, "Why'd you do this?" "You told me to." One of the worst times to be a detailer was when 3D design software like the SDS2, and at the time it was called Xsteel, were in their first couple years, and everybody was getting them, and people were starting to get used to them, that they were around. So architects, particularly architects, not so much engineers, got the impression that revising detailed drawings was just a matter of hitting a few buttons, right? Oh, you've got top of steel wrong, let me just edit that top of steel, and poof, the steel detailers are steel. Ugh, the steel details are right now. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It might not be as bad as drawing it with a pencil, but sometimes it's even worse. Oh god, that was for a long time. It's starting to get now where everybody kind of understands that, yeah, it's faster and it has some advantages, but one of the disadvantages, that model will be correct, and we need to make it correct.
Right.
So,
maintaining model integrity is both a time saver due to changes, but it also it spends some time to make sure that you've maintained that integrity and that everything is actually accurate.
yeah, like
As soon as you let that integrity slip, you may think it's fine. Oh, I'll just change this dimension now. I just change it on a drawing, and you may get away with it for now.
no,
but
no.
something.
You will never ever get away with it.
Well, you get away with it to get that drawing out the door.
Yeah.
But then when something comes back changed and you got to rerun that plan and forget that, oh yeah, I need to make sure that modification happens, and you didn't carry it into the model,
Yeah.
guess what? Now your drawings are going to be wrong. And you're going to have problems.
And somebody will inevitably say to that, "Well, just don't forget." And it's like, that's not how life
Oh
works.
yeah, just don't forget. Sure.
Yeah. It's like I was, I was reading an article about cell phones and how they're trying to make the screens and stronger and all this stuff, and one of the guys' comments is, "I don't understand this problem. Why don't people just stop dropping their phones?" And he was serious. And he was like, the nature of this problem isn't that phones crack, it's that people drop phones. Don't drop phones. And it's like, okay, Superman or whatever, the Flash, that if you drop your phone, you catch it before it hits the ground. Like, have you never ever dropped something? Is that... And people people asked them that, and he was like, "Yes, I've had my phone for 3 years and I've never dropped it." It was like,
Probably never taken it out and looked at
right,
it either.
you must be fun at parties. What is going on? So stairs are like one of the worst, right? Like our bids always include the revision due to field measurements, so most of the time we can kind of pick that up. The one that I had that was absolutely one of my favorites, big stair job, like, you know, I don't know what it was like. It ended up being lots and lots of flights of stairs. And
it was at least 7 or 8 stair towers.
yeah, and it was for a shopping mall. And right when we started to draw the job, the first thing is we look at it and we're like, all right, well, all of these treads are over 7 inches tall, and that's not going to fly. So we issue a big RFI. And I said, well, can you, put together a rough drawing of the stairs with the tread height fixed, and then we'll submit that. Okay, yeah, well, here you go. Here's a rough drawing of these stairs with the tread height fixed. And they come back and they say, no, follow the contract drawings. You sure? Because code. Yes. Follow the contract drawings. Okay. Fine. Just write your name on this check here and we'll follow the contract drawings.
And it wasn't as simple as that either. We went through several passes back and forth, and we really made them sign off on, I understand that if I have to revise this again due to the code being enforced at some point, this will be a change order.
Right. And they did. And to be fair to the customer, they were fully aware of the ridiculousness of the situation. Right?
I believe that they probably passed that note on down the line.
Yep.
They signed off on it because somebody signed off on it for them.
Yep. So we finally get to it, and they're like, "Oh, we need the shop drawing. We need the shop." Okay, all right, you're convinced, and we're going. And we draw these stairs up, and like you said, several towers of stairs, and we're getting them in. And so finally, we get to like the last one of these. Right? We submitted the first one. It's out for approval for just months, and in the meantime, we're continuing to submit further stair towers. Right? And I've told them, hey, don't you think we should wait for these drawings to come back from approval? Because despite what we've said, I'm fairly convinced that they're going to come back and say, all right, you need to make these stairs per code. And lo and behold, we get the first drawing back from approval, and the architect in this kind of flippant gesture just says, reduce this stair height. Like they just make one note on the drawing, just fix this stair height to be less than 7 inches. And
well, it was worse than that too, because normally the way to do that is to just add a tread.
Mm-mm.
But they didn't have the length to do it.
Right.
So what they did is they actually changed the floor-to-floor height.
Yeah.
They screwed up all of their structural framing, which was not part of our package. I can't even imagine. I mean, we just had the stairs and it was bad enough. I can't imagine. You've got your stairs out for approval. Maybe they're even back and approved.
Right.
And then the stair guy comes along and says, hey, these stairs aren't up to code. And so your solution is, we're going to change the floor-to-floor height.
Nope. And, finally we get to the end of this job. We're so happy all these stairs are done, and we get that back, and it's like, oh, no. Here we go again.
Yep. And the problem is, too, and I think we touched on this earlier, you've booked your time to do that.
Right.
And now, they feel that I'm at the front of the line. My job is still pending. And it's like, well, it was.
Right.
But all I was supposed to have to do was get some field measurements and finish this up. And now I have to do the whole thing over again.
Right. It's hard because you can't understand it from their perspective, right? Like a little bit. Like,
sure.
It's like, oh man, I need these drawings done. I hired you to get these drawings done, and now I can't. It's like I want to get to them. I really do. Like the last thing I want to do is upset a customer.
Right.
But like we said before,
that's why it's so painful. And that's where you and I get into the our problems is we're the owners, so we're going to have to do the work essentially for free as far as overtime's concerned. We're just paid a salary. We're paid to the profits. So whatever time we spend on a job, it doesn't matter. We're getting the fixed amount of money. Whereas if I were to tell my employees, hey, I need you guys to really bust it on this. We're going to work 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. You're going to work as much as I work. I can't afford to pay that. You know what that change order is going to become at that point? Because now you're going to have to talk about expediting as far as that extra time.
Yep.
And they may not even be available. I can't require somebody to work 80 hours a week. They're not a partner. They didn't sign on for this crap.
Right.
So
Right.
they get their 40 and they go home. And that's, great for them. But you can't force them to work that kind of overtime.
Right. And then we do that sad walk over to our spouses and say, hey, that trip we had planned this weekend.
Yeah, my wife loves nothing more than for me to say, yeah, remember how I said I was going to have tonight off? Well,
right.
Nope.
Right. And our spouses are both good, right? They're both good about it.
Yes, they are.
But I know spouses who are less reasonable about such things. And even them being good, I still hate to disappoint, right? They're not angry, but they are disappointed. And I agree, I'm disappointed too. There's nothing I would like to do more than to, just hang out with the family at the water park or whatever.
Right, I served my time. I put my 40 hours in.
Right. And sometimes, I almost want to tell those sob stories to the customer and be like, listen, to do this drawing in the schedule that you want, I have to decide to get rid of, or to skip my kids' play. Not that I would do that, because the customer... Well, in that... I won't say the words, but everybody knows the words that I'm talking about. If you want me to miss my kids' play, that's not going to happen. But there are other sacrifices that we do make and that we'd rather not. And there's a cost to those. And sometimes the change order that we write can't be big enough to cover it. Like with those stair drawings, there was no amount of money I wanted them to pay me that would make me feel okay about doing those revisions. And I can't actually bill them the make me feel better amount. It has to be the okay.
A few too many zeros on that.
Right. It's the this is what it actually costs to take. And detailers will understand this. If you're not a detailer and still listening, I don't really know why, but detailers will understand. Drawing something once is all right. Retrying it is the worst.
Doing it a third time.
Oh, man. The first time it's, there's a little bit of challenge, you're learning, whatever. The second time, man, it's just drudgery. Such monotony. It's like a constant deja vu in the most boring way possible.
Well, that about wraps up our video on revisions and some of the challenges they present. Feel free to share some of your own horror stories down in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and also make sure you ring that notification bell to be alerted whenever we post a new video. Thanks again for joining us on the Steel Forum. We'll see you next time.